There are currently 746 inmates on California's death row, the most in the nation. And while no one has been executed since 2006, several news outlets, including the Los Angeles Times, are suing the state, seeking access to public viewings of all portions of the executions, including the so-called infusion room, where deadly drugs are mixed.
For decades, reporters have been allowed to witness executions, like when my brother, Brian Rooney, described one for ABC in 2005.
I was struck by how long it took. It was at least 22 minutes.
The Boston Globe's Peter Canellis witnessed the 2001 execution of Oklahoma City bomber Timothy McVeigh.
The breathing becomes very, very unnatural.
McVeigh himself had sought to have his execution televised, something the news media has tried in the past. Both popular TV host Phil Donahue and KQED in San Francisco lost suits in the early 90s. The state of Georgia did audio recordings of some of its executions, which were made public following a lawsuit.
This is a recording of the execution of Ivan Ray Stanley.
But the issue for the LA Times is full access to the whole process, including the infusion room, where lethal drugs are mixed. The suit says state regulations deny the public's right to know whether chemicals are properly handled. After all, there have been many botched executions.
I do detect, or it seems to be, that he is breathing.
Invariably, when media outlets request more access, it turns political. The Criminal Justice Legal Foundation, which supports the death penalty, accuses the LA Times of being a combatant against efforts to resume the death penalty in California.
The execution is now in progress. He made one jerk.
The more information, the better informed, regardless of how horrific.
You know, one thing I don't know is whether the LA Times also sought to be able to record or videotape things as they in process, because television is discriminated against by the tools of its trade. Newspaper reporters could go in and be witnesses, but audio recordings were made by the states in the case of Georgia, but television can't. They can be a witness like my brother was, but they can't do anything like that. But being able to see, because there have been problems, as we know, with the electric chair they don't use anymore, lots of problems with the chemicals. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what kind of expertise the LA Times has in deadly chemicals, but being able to see the process, I think, is critical.
Well, and if I understand it correctly, tell me if I get this wrong, because it's not a sweet spot for me, but California has a new execution protocol that allows only one of two chemicals to be used. One of two chemicals has to be used to kill people, one of which, pentobarbital, I believe the manufacturer says, you shouldn't be using this to execute people. And then the second chemical, whose name escapes me now, is actually not legally available in the United States. So there's these big question marks about how this is going to play out. It seems to me self-evident that the media, as a proxy for the public, should be able to witness state power being used to take a life in the public's name, which is what's going on here. It's not clear to me, even if that makes sense as a matter of principle, that there's a First Amendment right for the press to do this. And my understanding is that the case law is sort of unsettled around this. I don't think I'd want to watch it. I don't think I'd want to hear too much about it, but I feel like we should be able to get it.
I don't want to watch Roseanne either. Just turn it off.
I agree with you, but I think that 75% of the people who, in the public, who maybe want to watch this, don't want to watch it to make sure things are being done above board, being done correctly.
It's political.
It's reality TV.
Yeah,
it's retribution, it's punishment, it's feeling that they're better than whoever it is strapped to that gurney. It's kind of this. It's like those Faces of Death videos.
Could be simple morbid curiosity too.
Exactly. So should we take the risk that this person's death, which is supposed to be for the betterment of society, is instead used for infotainment? I'm not sure that's right either.
Well, there is no First Amendment right of access to executions any more than there's a First Amendment right of, hey, I want to get in and interview this particular prisoner next week.
ADX Florence. I'd love to get in and
yeah, I mean, the officials decide whether that's going to happen or not. That said, I completely agree with you, Adam, that we should have full access to these things. There is no more awesome power that the state exercises than executing somebody. I also think that a spokesman for a pro-death penalty group kind of gave away the game when he said what the Los Angeles Times is really trying to do is stop the death penalty. Well, I don't know whether that's true or not, but I thought it was interesting that the head of the pro-death penalty side understood what the practical effect would be if you did allow the media in, it probably would mean the end of the death penalty.
You're probably right about that. I mean, I have to say that I'm appalled by the whole thing. I would never want to watch it. However, these cases where people have lingered and we really don't know, and to your point, this using of drugs that are inappropriate or told by the manufacturer don't use, that's in any other situation that would be a high investigative piece, because it sounds crazy, but we're allowing it. So they make a point, the Los Angeles Times, in saying full access should be given so that we can see, as representatives of the public. So I have to agree with that, though I don't think they have the First Amendment right to be there, but I think they should push for getting that, because there's a lot of information we don't know. But I also have to agree with Layla. This would turn into something else if television was there.
Well,
and it
I don't
also
think there's a way for. I mean, it all depends on how it's used.
Well, here's what's going to happen. So you first should get the reality TV version, and then everything would be turned into some kind of meme online.
And then there'd be a discussion.
All kinds of
political discussion.
It'd just be really. It would be. I think controlling that kind of stuff in a tasteful way is really.
Our government in action, the ultimate
no, you're right.
action
I didn't say
of the government
nobody's disagreeing with that.
Supersedes everything else. On the federal side and on the state-by-state side. A lot of states have stopped using the death penalty because of some of the issues Adam raised. And then there were countries that were importing these drugs to us that said, we're not sending it to you anymore. So a lot of these states that have death penalties Connecticut hasn't used it in decades now. So
well, I think, the question comes, just because we can do it, we have the ability, we have the technology to do it, should we do it? If the question is, should this be documented? Well, we have a system by which it's documented. People are allowed to be in, media's there to document, except for the part that you've mentioned, which I believe should be covered.
But there are no recordings actually in the room.
I get that. I don't know. I'm just... we got to figure out
your ambivalence.
that's you're probably on some ways you're right, but I can't